Star Trek is such a sophisticated creation of the world in the future.
I think everything they do has a basis in some physics, but there's always going to be discrepancies. In today's terms, the Starship Enterprise is probably the largest spacecraft that would ever have been built. So with the constraints of current launch vehicle technologies, you would actually have to bring it up in separate pieces.
In the previous versions, it was built in space, and that's the right place to build something of that size and class. The Star Trek Enterprise and other vehicles rely on warp drive, which requires the distortion of space-time in order to travel faster than the speed of light.
We don't have the ability to do that right now.
The theory behind the warp drive is matter-antimatter.
The concept of antimatter and matter containment does exist for us, so we do understand a little bit of the physics associated with that. However, we're not there yet. We would have to develop this kind of technology in order to be able to travel longer distances across space like the Starship Enterprise does.
Well, the role of the deflector shield is to protect the spacecraft. This is like a force field. That's not a technology that we have today.
But what we do have is magnetic shields to help protect us from radiation.
We just put the Juno spacecraft in orbit around Jupiter, where this radiation environment is a real huge hazard to the spacecraft. We put all of our sensitive electronics inside a titanium vault, and that allows the electronics to survive this very hazardous radiation environment.
But we would like to be able to generate something like that around one of our own spacecraft to help protect astronauts from radiation. So the holodeck is a technology which allows people to simulate an environment around them.
The idea of the holodeck is evident today in artificial reality, virtual reality. I've worn a HoloLens in which I'm able to walk on the surface of Mars. What do you think the biggest risk for humans traveling in deep space is? It's not the radiation, it's not the technology, it's the psychology. The holodeck is a great idea for that. So I can imagine in a vehicle going to Mars, we will have virtual reality, the best we can do in terms of a holodeck type environment, but people will be able to experience life back on Earth and help keep themselves healthy.
The transporter relies on knowing the specific pattern of each individual so that you can recreate it from one spot to the next, which is essentially transporting you in the particle stream.
The way I would think of it is that we can take like a picture and we can digitize it, and then we send the digital image and then we reassemble the digital image.
So if you could map out each atom's wave function and then you could store it and then recreate it somewhere else, that in a sense would be like a transporter.
The tricky part, of course, is this living thing. How do we take from a living thing, a digital image of it, and recreate it as a living thing? That's an interesting problem.
I think that Star Trek has been inspirational for technologists. So, for example, flip phones, we have those nowadays. Tricorders, we have those nowadays. They're like our iPads. One of the reasons why I became an engineer to begin with is because of Star Trek. When I would see the Enterprise, I would think about the future where human beings could travel and work in space, and it made me want to be a part of the space program.
The science fiction writers and the filmmakers really are a stimulation for us that work in the field. We are inspired by the future that they paint, that we are working to achieve.